Hi, and welcome to 7 Minutes or Less. I'm Tony Warner. I'm your host. And on the program, we talk about everyday topics and how they apply to your Christian life. Joining me, as usual, is Brother Bruce Bennett, who is a senior pastor here at First Methodist in Malvern. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you, Tony.
You bet. And last week we talked about the kingdom of God and what Jesus talked about the kingdom of God. So let's take it one step further. How should we view the kingdom of God? How should that happen?
Yeah, the kingdom of God is, as we talked about last week, breaking into the world, but also kind of invisible to the world. Only those with eyes that can see the kingdom, basically looking for the kingdom, can see the kingdom. So how does the kingdom come into the world, and how does that work? Well, Jesus indicates that the kingdom is within us. So it begins within the life of the disciple of Jesus. It begins in us. But then Jesus created the church, which is a very interesting entity. It's a group of people who are living as if they're already living under God's reign and rule. So in their hearts, God is king, and when they come together, they live with a different sort of ethic. And the ethic is that they want the will of God to be done in their midst. So what does that look like? Well, in the church should be a microcosm of the kingdom of God. When you enter a church, you should see people loving each other with amazing love and grace. You should see people who care about each other to such an extent that the whole world goes, wow, that's kind of amazing thing they got going there. When you enter the church, you should see a group of people who are concerned about fairness for everyone and the best of life being available to them. So the church is a place where this microcosm of the kingdom takes place. And the outside world should view it when they come in and be kind of shocked and drawn to it and say, wow, this is what life ought to be like all over the world. And it draws people into this, not only into this faith, but this community of faith where we live out the kingdom ethics, which is far beyond just goodness. It's about self-sacrifice and humility and giving ourselves to each other in amazing ways. This is the dream that Jesus has for the church, and that it would become so attractive to the world that it would spread throughout the world, where people in the world would say, that's the way the world ought to be. And we should try to live that way even now.
But shouldn't we take that outside the church, instead of just being people who visit the church,
exactly.
See it happen, but we should take that out. As Christians, we should carry that out.
Great point. So when we leave the church and we go out into the world, we should continue to have this same ethic no matter who we're dealing with, so that we love all people and we treat them with respect. And we want the very best for everyone. And so when people come in the church, they get a good dose of seeing what that looks like. But even when they deal with us outside the church, they see us living in this way, which is the way of Jesus. And it is transforming for everyone, for the world as well. So before we get to the point where all the world looks like the kingdom of God, we have to personally live it out in our daily life so that people see it and view it.
But we have a human nature, and that human nature has all kind of failings in it. How do we change that? How do we ourselves become not perfect beings, but more like Christ? So when we go out there, we don't get mad in traffic, and we don't get mad at somebody who's a clerk who doesn't wait on us. How do we do this?
I think that's where the church is really important. You got to practice it somewhere. And the easiest place should be within the church, right? Where people are living by the same ethic within the church. So you get to practice it with people that are practicing the same, so that when you go out in the world, maybe it becomes a little bit easier to practice it even toward people that may not reciprocate it, right? So the church is the training ground where we begin to live it and learn how to live it, so that when we go out in the world with the rest of the world, we can live it and reflect the kingdom of God.
You know, that, excuse me, that's easy to say, and I'm not criticizing.
Yeah.
It's easy to say, but because when you're in church, you're moved by the love that you feel and you give it. Okay, there's a warmth, there's a great feeling in that Christian love. Going outside, once you go outside, let a day or two go by before you get pumped up again on Sunday. You know, it's tough, isn't it?
Yeah, it's daily discipline, and it's thinking about it. It's being conscious about it, right? I have to be conscious of people who don't reciprocate my love and grace. I have to be conscious that it doesn't really matter whether they reciprocate it. This is what it means to live in the kingdom, to live by the ethic of the kingdom, to try to fulfill God's will in everything that I say and do. Yeah, it is tough. There's nothing tougher than that. But it can happen. It's doable.
Oh, I think it is doable. Yeah. I think I'll go practice. Brother Bruce, thank you so much for being with us, and thank you everybody for joining us. If you'd like to ask Bruce a question, you can email it to info@firstmethodistmalvern.org, info@firstmethodistmalvern.org. We'd love to have your questions. We're getting a couple, and we're going to try to work them in through the stream of the program. So thanks again, Brother Bruce, for being with us.
Thank you, Tony, for being so provocative.
Oh my. We'll see you.